Hey guys, Flamingo Creeper here. Get comfy, close your eyes, and prepare for something creepy. This story is from the perspective of a female. To give a little bit of background, I live in one of the capital cities of Australia. This capital city is quite small, which means you can go through the city centre through a multitude of stores, and the same 5 or 6 people will be there with you. These people aren't following you, they're just going in the same direction. This is the reason why I didn't freak out at first, and this is the reason it took me so long to react. It was the year 2003. I was 13 and my mother had finally let me go on a shopping trip into the city centre by myself. I was excited by this and grabbed my purse and left. To note, I did not have a mobile phone for another year, as mobile phones were an extremely expensive commodity and were nowhere near as high-tech as they are today. When I first made it into the city centre, I was enjoying the weather and looking through various stores. I stopped off in a store called Wacky Shack, a gag gift store with pop culture references, when I noticed him. This man would have been in his late 50s. Well-dressed, standing in the corner staring at the gift cards. When he looked over at me, he had a look of disapproval and something else. I tried not to think anything of it. I was only 13 and out by myself, so for all I know, it could have just been parental concern. When I left the store, the man was not too far behind me. I didn't think anything of it. As I had stated, my city was small. He followed me into a store called Toys R Us, following me down various aisles looking at dolls and skateboards, even at trampolines. I thought nothing of it. I explained it away as maybe he had a niece or a nephew, a child, a grandchild. He could have even been shopping for a family friend. So who was I to pass judgment? The man followed me out of the store, and through various others, which just confirmed what I felt initially, that he was gift shopping. After all, he'd started off looking at gift cards, so it would only make sense that he was looking through other toy stores and clothing stores. I did, however, become uncomfortable when he followed me into a clothing store called Supre. This clothing store is for the younger female demographic. Most men don't venture in there because it makes them uncomfortable, if not only for the clothing style itself, but for how cramped the store is. Again, I tried not to think anything of it, but it's just the way he kept looking at me, somewhere between disapproval and something else. I'd finally had enough. I made a beeline for a lingerie store named Bras and Things. I was going to put this to rest and test my theory. If this man was truly shopping for a younger girl, then he would have no reason to follow me into that store at all. But he did. I walked straight to the back of the store, where the 2 clerks were standing. They must have seen the look of fear in my face, because one walked straight past me to the man and started to pitch a sale, asking awkward questions like, "Are you looking for something for your wife? Do you know what size she is? Oh, or maybe you're looking for something for yourself. We do have a lovely line that would look great on you. Would you like me to fit you for a more comfortable experience?" Whereas the other clerk came over to me and asked if I knew who this man was. Tears filling my eyes, I choked out that I had no idea who he was. I further explained that this man had been following me for 2 hours, and I was now terrified for my safety. The store clerk standing with me smiled and told me to stay calm and follow her lead. I took a deep breath and followed as she walked over to the other store clerk, trying to sell the man a red silk nightie. "I'm taking my little sister out for lunch," she said. The other clerk smiled and told us to have a great time. The man stared at me, no longer a look of disapproval and something else, but a very distinct look of rage. The store clerk walked me down to the train station and waited for me to board my train. She told me to be safe, and that if anything of the sort happened in town again, that I could always rely on the staff at her place of work. I thanked her and caught the train home. To this day I am still grateful those store clerks came to my rescue. I have no idea what would have happened to me But as a young 13-year-old, I always thought those stranger danger talks were over the top until then. I can only guess at what he had planned for me if he had managed to get me alone. After all, these types of things don't happen in your own hometown. At least that's what I thought. And to this day, I won't go into town by myself, nor have I told my mother what happened. This story is from the perspective of a male. In 2007 or 2008, during a time frame where I was unemployed, I bought dinner from a KFC drive-thru. Pulling off into a side street to eat, I was quite happy when a car with two men pulled up behind me. As I was eating, they started flashing their lights. This was all a bit too weird for me, so I decided nope and left. I drove about 2 blocks and then pulled over, realizing they had followed me the entire way. I decided to try to ignore them and started eating my burger again. About 5 minutes later, they drove away. I figured they thought I was either a supplier or a dealer, and then realized they were wrong. Although nothing creepy came of it, it was still mildly unsettling. This story is from the perspective of a female. Back in 2004, a few months before my 14th birthday, my mother gave me my first mobile phone, a Nokia 3310. Growing up, I wasn't exactly popular, so when I got my mobile, I only gave my number to a small group of friends as well as my family, but a few months after, I started getting some really strange phone calls. It started off with silence on the other end before I would hang up. After a while, I decided it was a friend playing a stupid prank, and would leave the call going, but put my phone in another room to make sure they'd wasted their minutes. After a few months, a guy started talking to me when I would answer. His voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. He would tell me I was the most beautiful girl in the world, and that he loved me, and that he was my secret admirer. As a girl with no self-esteem, this was extremely flattering. This continued for a few months, and I didn't think anything of it. Stupidly, I did not tell my mother what was going on. It started getting creepy after 2 or 3 months, and he would start complimenting me on my outfit, the exact one I was wearing, or he would say he'd loved what I'd done with my hair. One day, I thought he had seen me prior to going home from school, or when I had walked down to the corner store and tested the theory and asked what I was doing right then, and flipped the bird. He told me that was not very polite, and I shouldn't flip someone like him off, because
you don't know what I'm about to do to you in my sleep.
Naturally, I freaked out and hightailed it the hell back inside. I closed the blinds and armed myself with a meat tenderizer, nearly crying until I heard my mother pull up home. After a few more horrifying phone calls, I turned to what friends I did have. The first person told me I should go commitment on him, because guys our age are terrified of a lifetime commitment. The secondary group told me I should go talk to the police, tell them what's going on and see if there's anything they can do, whereas the third group told me to talk to my mother. I decided to go with the first guy's opinion. This wasn't necessarily smart, but I concluded that if he was in fact my age, he would be terrified, and I thought I had done the right thing, because not long after, I didn't hear from him. Now this is the messed up part. The phone calls stopped coming in when the man who lived across the road from me was arrested on sex offender charges as well as pedophilia. This is the man who is a father to 2 of the girls that I was friends with, who had my number. A man who told my mother he didn't know where I was when she was looking for me, despite the fact that I was sitting in his living room. The guy was arrested for watching a younger girl in the shower through the window, but they also found child pornography on his computer. Years later, whilst he was still in jail, I was told by his youngest daughter that he kept making phone calls around the time that I was being stalked, and that one night she heard her mother and father fighting, and her mother yelled, "Leave the poor girl alone, you're scaring her. She's only a child, for Christ's sake." I still think back to that time frame, and about that day, when he told my mother he didn't know where I was, that he had offered me a drink. being awkward, I'd said no. So guys, that was my first video. What did you think? Creepy enough for you? There will be plenty more to come. Unfortunately, I don't have a roster system set up for this quite yet, so they'll be a bit all over the place until I can figure this out. If you would like to, my email is in the description. Feel free to send me emails regarding your own creepy encounters for me to read. If you don't feel like emailing, please join me up on Facebook. Message me there. After all, I'm always keen for a good scare. Sleep well, and remember, the monsters aren't under your bed. They're out in the street.